Human trafficking is a topic that we all should be aware of because there's an increase of a problem in human trafficking into the United States, especially in the East Coast, since that's where a lot of the shipment of people are entering the United States. Let me start with there are a lot of misconceptions about human trafficking. Do you know what human trafficking is about? Recognize the difference between trafficking and smuggling. And do you know that it's related to slavery in one way or another? And that if you believe that slavery was abolished 200 years ago, you might need to do that again. Because slavery is still today, especially in the human trafficking world. That is something that we need to think about when we think of human trafficking. So what is human trafficking? This is the mission of the United Nations Protocol to Prevent and so on, that they conjure up. This is the definition of human trafficking, which is the recruitment, transportation, transfer, harboring, and a person by means of threat, force, form of coercion. And that also includes abduction, deception, and abuses of power in those positions. And so in that, they create victims of ability. So the victim would be trafficked to internal within their state or within their country or outside the country. But this is the long definition of what human trafficking is all about. And it took years for it to establish this long list that encompassed in there. And when it was passed, it was in 2000. And so for human trafficking history, it's pretty new to us who are in the human trafficking world because this is like Bible things, the Bible definition of what human trafficking is all about. And that is where everything starts. And so what about slavery and human trafficking? So slavery is defined as a formal denial of individual groups of particular freedom to have control over their own lives. Slavery, our bondage, are not in modern day today. And there's difference between old slavery and the modern slavery. You would think in the old slavery we have issue with African American being shipped over here to the hard work in the cotton area and south. But modern slavery encompasses everything from prostitution, from stripping, from what else? Labor, selling bride, and everything else that we will go in a little bit. So then, let's deal with what is smuggling and what is trafficking. Because a lot of people are confused between smuggling and trafficking. So while trafficking is a crime against an individual, endanger human security, while smuggling is a crime against a state, it constitutes a to national security. On the other hand, trafficking may occur domestically or internationally. Smuggling is always transnational in nature, so the difference between trafficking and smuggling. And then usually trafficking consent is irrelevant because yes, some of the people that get trafficked may be older than 18, they may be in their 20s, but consent is irrelevant way of thinking because yes, they might consent to be going there to do certain work, but they're not consenting to the environment that they will be put in, where they have to be forced into labor or where they will be drugged so that they will work as a prostitute. And so consent is irrelevant in trafficking. While consent is relevant because you can be smuggled into another country because you want a better life, So that's why we see, I think lately there was a shipment of Chinese boat with full, you know, on the bottom of the boat that they are smuggling to the United States because they want to be in the United States. So that's the between smuggling and trafficking. Yes.
Implied in trafficking and smuggling, are we talking about two different activities? Usually when I hear smuggling of people, I think of being brought specifically to labor in a sweat or some other kind of work. Now, their work is exploited, but trafficking, I think of particularly of who are being exploited sexually. Is that a basic difference?
Yeah, there's a debate out there that is going on that some experts believe that smuggling should be within the smuggling itself category. Yes, we understand that these smuggle into the country, and yes, they will be put into forced labor and sometimes into prostitution. Everything is for them because they don't have the money, they don't have the form of documentation when they come into the country. Come on in. And some experts said that it's true they're being forced to be here, they're being forced to do those things, but they consent to that kind of, they consent to be, or they put themselves in that position. Trafficking people do not put themselves there because coerced through fraud to a better life in one way, but I believe that smuggling can also be a form of trafficking. When you get smuggled into the country, you still, I would argue that it's still under the definition or it's into trafficking. Because yes, you get smuggled in, and once you're in the country, you can traffic them within the country, in the internal word of trafficking within a position. And they would be put into a forced place also to do certain things. So that's the line that is very hard to distinguish sometimes. And so there's two school of thoughts out there, and the debate is still going on about that. So, okay. So we asked the question, why is trafficking so prevalent? We know for sure that the victims of trafficking victims are very vulnerable. Some are very young in age, and we know the demand for cheap and exploit sex and labor. There's a huge demand for underage sex tourism right now for both female and male. And it's very cheap to replenish when the children already been sexing or already been giving out to different prostitution ring already. So to replace them is very cheap. So there's a demand for new one, and there's demand for to use children as young as possible. So that's another problem, and it's also a network. It's very strong, constructed network that the government of whatever country that they to get rid of always have a problem dealing with. Some of the network are handled by the government of that country because that country is corrupted, and there is a lack of education and jobs for victims, and so they would be more vulnerable into thinking that, okay, if they listen to that person and they're willing to do or move to another state, they would be better, they would have money to support their family, and so they're willing to do that until they get to the destination. That's when they find out it's not really like they think it would be. And then another one is that poverty is also a major cause of why there's so many trafficked people out there right now. And so this is just a small of why it is important that we need to look at why there is an increased number in trafficking right now. Yes?
When I know there's an issue now with wives in China. Would that be smuggling, or would that be
The selling of
the
brides?
selling of brides from other
Well,
countries?
they are not smuggling because they have proper documentation to come into the country. Because when you sell a bride, you go through the whole procedure. Because those men would go to that country and meet the wife, the future wife, and they would then go to the embassy and fill out the paperwork. And then they would marry those women, and those women came to that country. They have proper documentation. But once they get there, what happens to them is another total different story. So we do not categorize them as smuggling at all.
So that would
Because
be,
those women also have consent to go there because they've been married. So they go in there for,
well, aren't some of them, well, not going there consensually? Basically, they're forced by their families or
forced by
sold.
family, yeah, there's a lot because especially in third world country and especially in Asian community, it's very important for the women to give back to the family, to their parents, and kind of like paying a debt to their parents. So yes, they are willing to do that. But then on the other hand, they are consenting to go because they believe that if they marry that person, they would have the money to support their parents, right? So they are voluntarily consent to go, even though yes, they may go under duress or they may go under precondition that they will have money or something like that, but they consent to go. So it's not smuggling at all, and it's not trafficking because they did not go without consent or being forced to leave. So those are in a different categories. And so here we go to forms of trafficking. We have sexual exploitation, and under that we have prostitution, children and women, and then there's one other category that I didn't put in that we start to see an increase in number, which is young men. Young men are being trafficked for sexual exploitation, and since there's a huge demand going on for sex tourism today, and a lot of pervert pedophiles are looking for young, healthy men. So we see a trend going up for the need for men also. And another one is huge one is forced labor, where you would go into slavery, involuntary servitude, and then debt bondage. And then another category, like Erwin just mentioned, mail order bride. So that's another, mail order bride is different than the other bride that we were just kind of talking about, because this is going through the mailing process. So you pick somebody online, and you that, and then you do the paperwork. You don't know if the person you pick is actually consenting to marry you, or that person will be trafficked for you. So that is a totally different category than other marriage, which is also a sham too. So that's why we have so many issues trying to define which is which, or trying to decide which is which. Yes.
Lynn, with the mail-order brides that you've listed here, are there cases where the woman is against her will sent
Yeah.
there are
That's why they're under the form of trafficking, because the man usually doesn't go there to talk to the wife, to talk to their future wife or get to know her. So they just pick out of a catalog or pick out of an online site, and then they just say, okay, I want her coming over here.
Is it like a ring of
Yes, it's a
women
ring.
that are
It's
snatched?
a work, what do you call it? It's a network.
The network.
That one of the case not too long ago where we have a problem with Google or eBay. It's an eBay issue where one of the women was listed on eBay for sale from another country. And some organization contacted eBay and they took it down immediately.
Yeah.
Yeah, but it was a huge problem because somebody was selling her without her notice. And it was in the network. And within just like 10 minutes online on the eBay, there was millions of orders for her already. And we were like, what is going on? And so luckily eBay took it down right away. But it was a huge thing. That's another problem. And then, of course, the selling of organs. That's another issue too. Yes.
Can you explain that? Like, are they getting organs from people that die, or are they
Alive.
They're taking
Yes.
organs from people that are already alive?
Because when you get live people organs, the chance of getting it to you and getting into your body is more successful than a dying organ or an already died organ. So usually poor countries are willing to sell their organ because they do not have money. They were in poverty, they cannot survive or raise their children. So if you're in need of a kidney,
So they
That's fine.
consent to having their organs being sold?
some can consent, but then we also see a huge market for kind of like a black market where they would kidnap children, they would kidnap young women, young men, and just cut out the part that they need. Yes.
Now, with the removal of organs,
Mhm.
where do these people go to? I mean, do they go to a first world country or like the United States and have their organs removed there? Or is it done elsewhere?
No, it's done elsewhere. It's done where the organ is. Most of the time, it's done where the organ is. And the people who cut them out are usually doctor, but are somehow barred from practicing. And so they are under kind of like black market doctor who remove those organs. And then they would have a network of how to smuggle it out of the country into the destination place where it's actually needed. Yeah, but we see an increased number of removal of organs, that it is a major concern. Yeah.
Can I ask you, which form of trafficking do you see the most? Would that be the sexual exploitation?
Yes, sexual exploitation would be the first, and the second one would be forced labor. And then it's also depend on who's being trafficking. If you see women and children, majority of it will fall under sexual exploitation. And then some women will fall under forced labor, where will go under a category of in need of a maid, a nanny, housework, something like that. And then, but the rest for forced labor, we see a lot of men. So usually women and children are under sexual exploitation. And so when we break it down into forms of labor trafficking, we will see that when you are forced into labor, you have a bondage labor. And there's a whole definition for that too, because once they traffic you to that, to the United States, for instance, and then you're supposed to do certain work for that amount of money. But that, whatever that amount of money that they promise to give you, do not go into your pocket. Actually, it's going to your madam or your boss pocket, and they will divide it and subtract it from your room, boarding, your food, your medical bills, and the money that they put up to traffic you over to this country. So eventually you do not have anything left. And so you would end up have to work for a long time before you can pay all the debt that you have, that you owe them, before you can get something for yourself or even something to go back to your country, or even if you can. So that's a form of bondage labor. And then involuntary servitude, where you have to do certain work that you do not volunteer for, or that they will not promise for you to do. So that's another problem. And then domestic servitude, and then child labor. Yes.
I'm sorry to interrupt. In regards to involuntary servitude,
Mhm.
are these young women being forced in this through fear, manipulation, or is there
Yes.
drugs involved?
There's all of that: fear, manipulation, fraud, sometimes, and drugs.
What kinds of drugs or?
They would give or, cocaine, other drugs to get the woman addicted to it. So then if you do not do certain things that they want you to do, they will not give you a job. And so the process is going on like that. Not only that fear, but also beating, and also they can tell you that if you do not do certain things that they want you to do, your family back in whatever country will be harmed. Yes.
At one point, they're also doing that on certain, like, cocoa plantations, where they're kidnapping young kids to work on plantations, to pick the cocoa beans.
Mhm.
And that also, was initially sort of under the sheets, and then I think some groups got together and banned some of the chocolate bar companies. I know can't remember the name. It's the one with the fruit and the nuts.
Okay, so you're talking about a long time ago. So
Not that long ago, just a
there's
couple of
always
years.
a similar aspect to it. A form of slavery in the past. Yeah, those slavery also, suffer so much. And, their suffering is almost comparable to what the victims are suffering today. So in one way, it's very similar.
It's not so far-fetched. We've had an equivalent of bondage labor in, some of the farms where Mexican workers come in, live on a farm, and the farmer basically charges them, for their food, their lodging, and everything else, so that by the time they're done, they really, don't have much done.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
So it's right here. It's not necessarily
Yeah,
in other countries.
No, it's not necessarily in another country. United States have its own problem too. And because this subject is so huge, it's just too big, and every country is involved into it. And the United States is not innocent within itself. Let's put it that way. So, most vulnerable victims will be women, children, and those who are poor. That's very obvious. And so, when we talk about trafficking of children, we see that children being trafficked for, like I said earlier, prostitution, sex tourism, pornography, forced labor, domestic service, begging, adoption, organs, drug distribution, and then we see a huge increase in the trafficking of children for armed conflict. That's huge, and I think that would be my next article somehow down the line. Where children get trafficked to a place where they have war or a conflict within that nation, and they do not have enough men to take up the defense or take up the attack. They will traffic young children to be the first line of battle.
So that happens a lot. They would take children from other countries and do that, or they would
There's
steal from.
an increase in that number, where they would traffic other country children to, all within their country.
Oh, within that country.
Mhm.
Yeah, I
We
heard
see
about them
more
doing
within the
it
country, but then they start to see some,
outside of the country.
some movement of outside the country, especially young men.
Lynn, where's that happening now?
It's happening now we see somewhat in Congo, and what other country?
Somalia?
Somalia. It's huge over there. Yeah, Somalia is more than Congo right now. Yeah. And so it's a huge business, billions of dollars industry. And so this is interesting. What I find out is the third largest sources of profit for organized crime after drug and guns. I would think some other before, but I guess it's a huge, huge market business out there. And so getting back to root cause, of course, poverty, unemployment, lack of education, and access to resources are the main driving force for all this to happen. And other reasons, of course, include the cultural factors, the weak enforcement of the laws. These are also causes that I mentioned in my papers that I focus on the trafficking of children in Vietnam. And I have given lengthy presentation on that, and it encompasses all the causes that we have just gone through. And now let's look at the international, the United Nations, what they've been doing, and so on. That I understand that there's a limitation to what they can do, because some third world countries, they are they're very strict on what can come into their country, what can get involved in their country. And so usually international organizations willing to help them move along or improve their laws within the country, but then it would take the country willing to enforce those laws or willing to adopt those UN suggestions. And that is also another problem, another constriction, because some of the country only wants the aids, only want the money, but not willing to do the deed. And Vietnam is one of those countries. And I dealt with that a lot in my papers, that usually they would open the door and let UN in, the United Nations, NGOs coming in and help the country, but then they do not follow up with the laws that that the United Nations helped them set it up. So usually a lot of these countries have the laws established. It's not like they don't have the laws to protect their citizens. They do. The problem is that they do not enforce their law, or they do not train their officer to follow the law. And when you see a photo op moment, is when they are answering to the United Nations. Yes, we are doing this. Yes, we are doing that. You see, we take picture, we capture somebody. But that is usually one-time deal only. And then after that, things get back to normal. And some of the high corrupted government would be in that network, and they're protecting that network. And another debate I see out there is that international intervention is obviously the popular choice to combat sex trafficking. On the other hand, another school of thought would say that international intervention is ineffective if we do not address the root cause. So which of that you believe or think would work is, of course, your own opinion. But there's two schools of thoughts on that. And it's hard to tell, and it's hard to decide, because you're seeing some improvement in the international intervention level, but then you also see it's not working as well or as effective. So how much is that, is the poverty is the root problem? How much can you address the root problems before the international intervention would make it better? Which way you should go, or which way you should do first, is a question to be debated out there. And so, like I said, intervention is necessary. I believe intervention, there you go, I believe. The cop will say, no. Intervention is necessary, and as well worth it. See, I believe again. Is the international community job that should intervene in sex trafficking, because, like the UN official said, that it is the fastest growing business of organized crime, and over 1 million of children are coerced into commercial trafficking every year, and that number is climbing so fast. So intervention is needed. And I would ask why.
Okay, I was going to say, who's involved in the criminal aspect? Is it one group, or is it a particular country's group?
What do you mean by?
I know here, for example, in America, there are certain groups, for example, that control drugs.
Mhm.
And they usually say,
Well, over there's many network, there's many ring. And then there's also parents that selling their children into prostitution. So then not only the big network, but we also have these parents that willing to sell their kid.
well, for example, if you're going to do any trafficking or selling from, let's say, South America to the United States,
Mhm.
there has to be some crime group in the South American country and some
Mhm.
group here. How do you handle those? Or who are they?
We don't know. It's a hide and seek the game they're playing with the government, wherever they're going, it's a hide and seek. So that's why it's very hard to track them down and actually caught them in the act. That's why we only see like a raiding to karaoke bar, or raiding to a disco place, or raiding in a brothel, because that's the only place that we can know for sure. At least that once we get there, there's some underage children, or some people are being coerced in doing the type of work that they are doing right now. But until we get there and caught the madam or whoever owned that brothel, and maybe cite her for more information, otherwise it's very hush-hush. Because again, remember that a lot of the government are behind the act. So they have a lot of support from the corrupt government system. So not everything is transparent for you to see, like who would be the ringleader. You would never know. The ringleader could be a woman. And I would think a woman would understand a woman's hardness or a woman's right to fight for her freedom. But a lot of the ring that were caught, the ringleader are women. So it's very hard to tell. That's another problem that we have in tracking these people down.
What has the United States done as far as prosecuting?
Within their country or outside?
Well, for example, I know I've heard of cases where the United States has prosecuted for underage sex that occurred in another country.
Yes, because time is constraining, so I do not go into the U.S. effort, but U.S. has been very positive in this area, and we have the TIP, which is a long-term for anti-trafficking report that the United States are doing, and the first one was signed into law by President Clinton, and then President Bush amped it up, and with stronger regulations, stronger law, so that we would prosecute the perpetrator harder, and we would give the victim the rights that the victim is needed. And as far as I know, the 2008 TIP report is much better than the previous year report. And so the U.S. is constantly working very hard, and they are extremely harsh on pedophiles who get caught in third world country. Just like Britain are very strong on that. And not too long ago, there's a rocker star from Britain that went back to Vietnam and have sex with underage kid. And he was prosecuted in Vietnam, which is like nothing. And then when he get out, he get back to England, that's when he get another prosecute charge to him, and he have to go through with that. And hopefully he will be stick with a harder punishment than he was in Vietnam, because he was just slapping on the wrist and paying gold money, dollars, and that's all he get. But the reason why we should look at this is that it violates numerous human rights. We have United Nations Human Rights Article 4 for slavery. It's obviously fall within that article. And then we have Article 8 where, the effective remedy for helping for human rights was violated, because these sex traffickers do not have any form of remedy in court because they do not have any paperwork or anything to say that they are legal within the country. So another issue is that when we find these victims, how do we treat them? Because they are not the citizen of that country. They're not even an immigrant. Do we grant them an asylum? Do we grant them a T visa? What is their status? How are we treating them? So these articles are drawn up to support these victims. And a lot of the country right now are looking at victim as actually it is a victim and not just saying, you know, you are a wrongdoer because you come into my country illegally. And so a lot of rights are given to the victim right now, which is very good. So beside that intervention, what has been done? Who has done it? Has it worked? All those things are still in question. So intervention is, I think, intervention has been largely ineffective. International laws regarding trafficking is solely on an ideological standpoint. There's no after the law. There's no concrete line that can be drawn saying, okay, this is immoral, this should be happen, or this should be following up. There's nothing like that. International law is just, yes, it's violation of human rights. You can deal with that. We agree that it's a violation of human rights, but we're not willing to say anything further because each country have their own status, have their own sovereignty to deal with. And we are not willing to step in and say, you are doing wrong, you should do it our way, which is not what I'm saying that they should. But maybe they should be a little bit stronger. Who knows? But so another thing is that it's very hard because both level of government are not talking to each other. So, like if you have international intervention within a country, and that country have a national government and a local government, usually they do not communicate with each other. And when they communicate, it's not a clear communication. So one could misunderstand the other, or they do not know that the law is changing. And the law usually is constantly changing within a third world country. And so that's another problem, and somehow the international community need to find a way to deal with that. And they are dealing with it by providing more training, but it's not enough yet. And then a huge problem is that there's no universal definition term of trafficking at all. And then plus the age of children that are trafficked are different, very different from country to country. So it's harder for the United Nations to do something like in Thailand, the age of majority is 16. In other countries, the age of majority is 14. So that means by 14 they can have sex. That's legal in their country. But then the United Nations standard is 18. So then it's harder to balance that out. And then there's no definite universal definition at all. And then we can constantly seeing weak and corrupt enforcement of the traffic laws. There's law, but nobody is enforcing it. Or if they're enforcing it, they're not enforcing it to the full capacity of the law that provide to their citizens. So these are the problems that is still going on today. And so, I don't know, what should be done instead? I would suggest that the current international approaches should be changed. Because their approach is very minimal right now, make everybody happy, and we'll be happy too. Which is not correcting way of dealing with a human rights issue, to me. So, an internationally accepted definition is needed so that future policy can be based on that definition. We should have a foundation before we go further. without foundation, everything will collapse. So that's one of my suggestions. And proper analysis of all levels is essential to eliminate the gaps of knowledge. Because right now we have, there's a lot of report, there's a lot of analysis out there by experts, but it's not uniformly. So it could be a little here, it could be a little there, but not, each organization are not talking to each other at all. So they're not transferring valuable detail or valuable data that they have. So that is another huge problem. And then strengthening law enforcement to prevent criminal activity, to prevent the networking from growing bigger, and to prosecute those that they actually caught. Because a lot of these countries caught but then let go, and not actually prosecute them, which they need to be prosecuted, and to also give some sort of justice back to the family of the victims, or to the victim, him or herself. And involvement of, more involvement between NGO and different organizations, like I said earlier, increase cooperation and coordination. We do not see that right now. So we need to amp up in that area. So what do you think? Yes, yeah.
What is the role of Interpol and the other law enforcement agencies throughout the world? How are they coordinating against these criminal acts?
They do coordinate, but they have to go through the government system within that country. They would come up, like if, for instance, if they want to raid a brothel, they would have to get a consent from the local government, not only national government, but the local government. And they have to coordinate with the local government to be able to raid that place.
Right.
But then, think, because local government is the source of corruption. And so sometimes when they get there, everything is normal. The brothel, everybody there is over age, or that they have a license to be a brothel. And so for some reason, usually raid a brothel or a karaoke place is secretive, but somehow the words got out. And so those raids end up nothing at all. A waste of time, waste of money, waste of energy. But you cannot go through it without the help of the local government or the national government. So the problem is keep going around and around and around in a circle. So somehow we have to find a way to break that circle. What can we do? So, a question I pose, what do you think? How are your notion of human trafficking and modern slavery before you came in here and now change? That's something to think about. Do you think human trafficking is prevalent in the United States? We haven't really talked about the issue in the United States. And if you want to talk more about that, you have to take my class. And how should trafficking be dealt with? Should criminal prosecution be used as a deterrent? Or is it a punitive approach, too narrow? What other option out there? That's something to think about. And can the fundamental causes of sex trafficking truly be solved if changes are made within the existing policy? That's something for all of us to think about. So, and then what can the United States do other than provide more funding to stem this process? Because this is what the United States is doing, is provide funding to NGO and provide funding through other organizations to help combat the human trafficking problem. So that is it. Thank you.
I had a question. most of the non-government organizations, NGO, aren't necessarily directly related to the country where they want to function. How can we say that we're not forcing our values on another country?
That's another debate that we are having, is that we do not want to force our way of habit or our way of thinking onto another country. And that is the reason why the United Nations has been so slow to implement a lot of ways to deal with human trafficking, because they do not want to step over the boundary of sovereignty, because each nation has their own sovereignty and should be respected. But then we come back to the question of human rights. And then under human rights definition, there's no boundary. Every human living on earth should have the basic human rights that is given to them. So then that's why the United Nations are juggling between human rights law and sovereignty laws.
But we in the United States have 50 sovereigns, and each of those sovereigns has different values and laws. In Mississippi, someone can get married, I think, without consent at age 16. In New York, it may be 18 or 21. So even within our own country,
Yeah,
there are conflicts.
yeah.
So how can we dictate?
That's why the United States have yet to sign the Convention of the Right of the Child. Yeah, they have not. While every other country in the world has signed it, the United States have yet to sign it. And they've been helping with the human trafficking in ways that the United States increase the funding, and in the way that they create the TIP report, where they have expert ranking country all over the world to see what they've been doing and so on. Yeah.
But you just say that one difference between this, if you want to call it modern slavery and old slavery, is that old slavery was legal. I mean, there are all sorts of laws saying that you can buy and sell human beings. There's no country where this is really legal. It's not laws are not enforced against it, but no country really says this is legal.
Yeah, that's right. No country out there is saying that it's legal. However, some countries does say that prostitution is legal. And so the problem is the age factor. That's why the United Nations said prostitution in some countries is legal, in some countries is it not. How are we approaching that, and what are the age of the people are being prostituted? That's a huge problem area also. And then each country have the age factor, because like Owen said, some country the age of majority is 16, some is 14. And then once you hit 16, you can choose to be a prostitution, and prostitution is legal in that country. Then it creates another problem, because then we don't know how to find the illegal worker, because they just mingle within the group, and that within itself create another problem. So in one way, yeah. And I don't know the answer to all that and how to deal with all that. All I know is that it's a huge problem that we need to look at, and that we need to at least study it, analyze it, and trying to find a way to combat it, either in this area or in other area. Especially, I think we all would agree that children, especially minor children, should not be trafficked into prostitution. I don't think anyone in the world would argue with that. But then we start to see arguing with age. 16, 14. Yeah, what constitutes a minor? And so we go back to ground zero in everything that we do with human trafficking. Yeah, there.
Well, what countries are highlighted as to the countries that have the least strengthen the laws or do not condone the trafficking and smuggling? What countries are
They,
high on the list and low on the list?
you mean in condoning?
In condoning or allowing it to happen in their countries?
Well,
Making money off of it? What?
all the countries are not saying that we condone it. All of them are saying we do not condone it. Human trafficking is a violation of human rights. They all say that. But then when the TIP report coming out, where the expert evaluate each country based on their laws, the enforcement of the law, the training of the officer to actually combat it, and the number, the statistic that children or women being trafficked and all those stuff, and they rank those countries, and usually that's when they get listed in tier 1, tier 2, tier 3, and then there's no tier 4, but between tier 2 and tier 3 there's a watch, tier 2 watch. And so right now Great Britain, United States, France, and some Europe country are tier 1, meaning that they're actively doing something, trying to combat human trafficking.
Mm-hmm.
When you go down the tier, like tier 2, meaning they are somewhat active, okay? They're doing this, but they're not doing all of it that the United Nations have suggested them to do. And then when you get down to tier 2 watch, meaning that they're doing some, but not other, that we as a community, the world should push them along furthermore to make them change their law, to make them change certain things that they haven't done yet. And Vietnam is one of the countries that got put in tier 2 watch out category, which I do not believe that, which I don't think that they should be there. They should be in tier 3 because to me they're not doing enough to be in tier 2 watch category.
In each city in Vietnam, or just
Just
like
in
Ho Chi Minh
general.
City? What?
Just in general, the whole country.
The whole country?
Yeah. When the TIP report coming out each year, the United States have a report coming out annually, and they rank the whole country. And then when you go in further to investigate certain countries, some statistic out there will tell you what area within the country are the hotspot.
So in your research, you're telling me that Vietnam condones.
They
Yes.
do not say that they condone, but the national government said that they do not condone. In fact, they are trying to combat these network of human trafficking. But what I'm saying is that they are saying that they are doing it, but they're not actually doing it. So then, in another word, they are condoning human trafficking within their country. But they're not saying it. They still follow some protocol that was set by the United Nations. They're following it so that they would get the fund.
Every now and then you hear reports in the papers here that some individual went to Vietnam to abuse children in Vietnam. They were caught in another state. They got away from there and got into Vietnam. And they really get lost. But I want to know, is that because they have that underground of traffickers in children and traffickers in just human beings, period?
When you said get lost, what do you mean? Like
When they get into Vietnam,
there's no way to
trace
keep
of
track of them?
Yeah.
Okay. Well, first of all, the judicial system in Vietnam is really slacking or non-existent at all. If you get caught in Vietnam, all you have to do is pay money and you will get scotch-free. There's nothing on your record of whatsoever or any report back to your country that you are doing this kind of wrong thing in that country at all. So if you are pedophiles and pervert, you would go to third world country and do your act.
Mhm.
Because you do not have to pay any consequences for your action at all. Mhm. Yeah.
Interesting.
Are you thinking?
Of course, I'm always thinking.
Okay. Any more questions? Okay. Thank you.
Thank you.
And to show our appreciation, can you come
Oh.
way out here? We can have a little gift basket for you.
Oh, thank you.
I want to get on the speakers list.
Thank you, Hannah.
You're welcome.
Well, thank you.